on local cable TV and recorded for rebroadcast on the local cable channels and on the internet. Deadline for submitting Community Preservation Committee proposals for the April 20th April 2020 town meeting is tomorrow, so that's not much time. Notification of April 11th. We will be unveiling the Julian Steel marker at Town Hall. This is a great thing put forward by the Historical Commission, and it's a very fine thing to sort of end the bicentennial too. The announcement of local officers on the ballot for May 4th. Is the time of the town election. Nomination papers for election to town officers are available in the town clerk's office. And there continues to be some committee appointments for FY20. If you are still interested in being involved in helping out with the town, go on the volunteer part, especially on the Board of Selectmen part of the West Newbury webpage. First item on the regular business is a public hearing on a National Grid petition to relocate an existing utility pole, pole number 14 at number 9 Cherry Hill Street. So I make a motion to open the public hearing.
And second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So,
yeah, this is a customer request to move a pole that's kind of in the middle of their driveway. To move it roughly 40 feet if you're looking at the pole from the street to the left. So it's off of the driveway.
I'm totally familiar with this. It's across the street from my house, so
Okay.
I know exactly what it looks like.
Yeah.
Could you just state your name for the...
Oh, yes. My name is Michael Benitez, representative from National Grid.
Michael, when do you think this will take place?
I don't know the schedule. I think the last thing we had to do was to get approval from the town, and then, yeah, it's.
How I don't have a problem with the storm. I'm just curious how many how long do you have to shut power off for, and for how many homes are affected by that?
I don't believe I believe they can do it live. I don't
know
that they'll have to shut it off. If they do, I wouldn't. I don't know how many people would be affected. I wouldn't say it would be more than 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike.
I mentioned the pole relocation to Gary Bill today, and he indicated there is a town drain pipe in that vicinity. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but if anything is to make sure to check with the DPW before you start installing the pole to make sure it doesn't interfere with the drain pipe.
Yeah, we have to do dig safes every time we do
I know, but I don't know if it's a drain pipe would show up in dig safe. So obviously utility lines and water lines. Because I don't know if it's. I think it's just.
Buried culvert there.
Yeah, I think it's just PVC pipe. So
PVC pipe.
yeah, so I don't know if that would show up. So just be aware.
Yeah, so I wonder if how accurately it's located. I assume when it was put in that there was a plan showing. No, okay, sorry. How naive of me. I guess I thought that because that's not that old. It was 15 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. It was. Yeah. But that drain pipe was probably put in 15 years ago.
12 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah, okay, 12 years ago. So, yeah, so I was guessing that at that point in time, we were probably actually recording things like that. Maybe I'm wrong.
And we can,
Yeah. Yeah, right. No, good point. No, I'm just saying that there might actually be a plan that shows where it is, exactly where it is in the ground, and which would make it easier to not drill a hole through it. Yeah. Oh, you have like an as-built that shows where it really is? Yeah, okay. All right, great.
we can contact the DPW and, make sure that we're not interfering with
Great.
drains. Yeah.
Okay. Want to make a motion?
Yeah, move that we approve the request to move the pole number 14, 40 feet to the northeast on Cherry Hill Street.
Second, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I make a motion to go out of the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thanks.
Thank you. Next item is a draft proposal to the CPC for improvements to the paid school playground. In order for this to be transmitted to the CPC, the board, as the owner of the ultimate owner of the property where the playground is, we have to be the sponsoring authority. So, any comments, Angus, that you'd like to make, or I've read all the stuff, and so for the public, there's there are several issues with the existing playground related to potential safety issues. The regulations related to playgrounds have changed dramatically in the last few years. In terms, this particular one now is the building inspector has looked it over carefully. It is not in ADA compliance. One of the big issues is the base of the playground. It's the existing wood chip base of the playground is not up to current standards now. That's one of the items. The playground, the structures itself have some issues. There isn't handicapped access to the playground, so there are a lot of problems with the existing playground. So the plan would be to.
It's not in there. I just looked through. I can't find it in there.
Okay.
Are you looking through it?
Yeah. The plan would be to send it to the CPC, have them evaluate. Certainly, this is under their purview. This qualifies as a CPC, would qualify as a CPC project. And that's pretty much a summary of what's going on. The town has a $20,000 grant from the Commonwealth to improve the area, so that will be part of it.
If you want to,
Okay, that's good.
yeah. Oh, so.
Page down. So Angus, anything that I've left out that you want to comment on?
Well, it's been so this issue was first brought to my attention last spring by a resident who's in attendance tonight, Tricia Spoulos, and I certainly want to recognize her, and I know this board's well aware of the work that she and others that she's helped to organize have been doing, kind of partly behind the scenes, but partly right up front and center. She's been before this board before, and has been actively corresponding with the school at different levels, the administration, both within the school and the district, and the Park and Rec Commission and the CPC. And So initially, actually, the idea was that the citizens group would submit the application, but as you noted, Archie, because the selectmen are the property owner, it has to be submitted on the board's behalf, which is great because that lends the board's support. But one thing that's been a little bit challenging with this proposal is I think there's, as far as I can tell, universal recognition of the need to make significant improvements out there. That seems to, going back to last summer, we spoke with CPC, we spoke with Park and Rec, spoke with this board, and I certainly know the school, superintendent and the school committee are highly supportive. But the challenge I refer to is what you have in front of you. The proposal is based on one vendor's quote, based on a conceptual plan that may or may not end up being the specific plan that the town agrees to. We have to meet the CPC's expectations that before projects are brought to them, that you have vendor quotes or bids, and that you're providing as close as you can to true pricing. But with that said, what we all envision when I say that I'm referring to Tricia and the citizens group, as well as myself and Wayne, who's been very involved with the DPW director, and the principal, Dustin Gray, would envision a really kind of iterative design process where both parents and kids who will actually be using the equipment would be involved with the design and would have kind of a hands-on, so that what comes out is really, there's a sense of ownership there. And there's two challenges there. One is the vendor that we've been working with most closely is a design build vendor. So they won't actually, you can't contract with them to come in and do a design and then come back later with a project proposal like you might with a different kind of project. Their entire thing is design build, so they don't actually start billing you until they're under contract to build the thing. So we're at a stage where it seems there's a lot of support to do something, but we don't know whether the exact, well, actually, I think it's fair to say that the concept in front of you would change, right? I know just for one thing, the height of one of the structures is something that might be, we might favor something that's not quite so high, just as one example. So I think that the funding that's proposed in here, I think is conservative. What they've shown is they've shown this poured-in-place rubber surfacing, which by all accounts is a terrific surface, and I think what we would want to do, but they've shown that covering the entire footprint, there would be ways to do that that's more there's pros and cons of that, because once you have a mix of the poured-in-place rubber and wood chips, that can create maintenance issues and durability issues. But that's one major variable you can see in the cost. The poured-in-place rubber surfacing is a major cost driver. And secondly, the actual equipment used, which the initial quotation we got was just a lump sum. We followed up and we got the backup that you see in front of you with the more unit pricing. Obviously, you can mix and match and have all kinds of configurations. And I did correspond with a landscape architecture firm early in the process, and just based on kind of round numbers and square footage, they thought would be in the $365, $375 range, which is a lot of money, but still significantly less than what we have here. So I think the CPC process, I think, is going to be, assuming this is filed, is going to be a good opportunity to drill down a bit on, what's the level of investment that the community will make. There's also there are some potential grant funds that would be supportive of an effort like this, but the timing those aren't things we're going to know about by town meeting. But I think it's a terrific initiative. I've been very happy to be part of it, and look to the board for direction and how you want to proceed. But I just want to be upfront that it's not like the proposal you have is all tied up with a bow. That this is exactly what's proposed. It's one vendor's plan of what could happen, but that same vendor could do something very different if that was the will of the community.
Yeah. So just out of curiosity, the other landscape architecture firm that you spoke with, the numbers, that sort of range of numbers they rolled out, did that include their design fee as well, or
It didn't.
It did not,
actually.
okay.
In fact, it's
Yeah.
funny because I had the firm that we've been corresponding with, O'Brien, had been referred to us by Groveland that recently finished up the playground project, as well as Newbury, where they're very well regarded. They're a major provider in this area. The landscape architect who I reached out to, who was part of the team on the middle high school, he actually referred me to this same vendor.
Oh, okay.
And said, you really don't need a landscape architect for a project like this. You ought to go in this direction. So then,
Yeah.
when I hear the same referral from three different sources,
Right,
I know,
right,
okay, that's
right.
probably someone we
Yeah,
can talk
yeah.
to, so.
I had, and I don't know if it's time to talk about this kind of detail or not, but I just had questions about the port in place safety surface. And there's a couple, first off, it's, I'm sure it's tried and true, but I still have to ask, does it outgas? Like what, when they use some kind of something that I can't recall how they phrase it here, but basically there's a solvent or something that volatilizes and goes away as it solidifies. And what is that? And what's, probably safe, but I need to ask that question. And I'm not quite sure how to get the answer to that from O'Brien or who. And then my other question also regarding that same material is, what's its lifespan and what do you do at end of life? How do you dispose of that material? I think that's something we have to think about with a lot of elements that we use now. And when it's no longer viable, what do you do with it? You can't dump it out back, so where does it go? So that's questions about that material.
In terms of disposal, I don't have
Yeah.
answer on that one. We did talk with.
Yeah, and I don't mean to get too far out in advance, but it's just something, we've got to think about the legacy of.
We did talk with O'Brien about the estimated lifespan
Yeah.
of both the equipment and the surfacing. And basically, if as you see in the package, there's a 10-year warranty on the surfacing, but he said that if you maintain it in accordance with the specifications, that it will basically last, at least a couple of decades. Obviously, they can't guarantee that.
Yeah.
But one of the key things, for instance, on snow removal, you don't want to be using any like metal edge shovel. So there's certain.
So is
things
it
that
kind of like a rubber roof, the same kind of thing?
I'm not sure.
It sounds like it's a lot thicker. I mean, the way it's described, I think the way I read it, it's 3.5 to 5 inches thick.
5 inches.
That's the way I read this.
That's right.
And so, it's probably, sort of foam-like, and, resilient foam-like. And so again, I don't know what's really in there. And yeah, nice soft surface. If I was going to fall, that's what I'd want to fall on. But yeah. Sure, absolutely, please, yeah.
I'm not, we never had a discussion with them about any of the, chemicals or anything that are in it. But I do know that,
I'll get closer.
can you hear? Okay. We never had that discussion, but I do know that the site work that is being done by a company that does that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And they really know and can look at that and tell us if needed to, if it's dangerous, if there's anything that needs to be done. I assume not, since this is done in playgrounds all over.
Right, yeah, and of course they're going to say it's not. I'm a skeptic.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I'd rather be cautiously skeptical than surprised and really sad.
Absolutely. I know the person that Wayne is working with, I know very, very well, and is also an environmentalist. So he would be very, very conservative with his decisions. So
Yeah.
just
Okay.
throwing it out there.
So, I would make a motion to approve the project and send it forward to the CPC.
I'd second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right. Thanks.
Next item is additional comments received about our Memorial Day Parade policy. There was some comments made that through internet problems, Angus was unaware of, and certainly the board did not see these particular comments related to the Memorial Day policy. So I looked at them, and I would have no objection to their addition to the Memorial Day Parade rules. That's my comment. And I'll find it in a second. I will read.
It's on page 22 of the packet.
So in the first paragraph, at the end of the first paragraph, the initial statement had the statement that we had approved before said, this includes any and all organized groups that appear to be participating for the purpose of protesting for or against a cause. And the next person wrote, the commenter wrote that any parade entries or participants promoting discrimination based on race, color, ethnicity, sex, gender, religion, sexual orientation, identity, age, or disability status is prohibited and will promptly be removed. And I do not have any problem with that change. The next change that was suggested is examples of prohibited language, and I would have to say that I don't. My personal opinion is that I don't think we should be defining what prohibited language is. It's as the Supreme Court says. See pornography, you know it. But I don't want to. I don't want to put it down as what exactly is a prohibited language, because then we'll get in the argument. Well, then you left something off.
That wasn't on the list. Yeah. And yeah, I would agree with you on that. And, you know, and there's a parade chairperson who, you know, will be given the responsibility of making calls. Making a judgment call. Yes.
So no matter how specific we would get, we would either leave something off or put something on that someone else didn't like. And I think it's better to be, in that sense, to just not define it specifically. I don't think we should have specific examples. So I would make a motion to add the language related to any parade entries promoting discrimination, etc., that I just read. Add that language, but leave off the language giving examples of prohibited language.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we will make the changes as noted, and people can review those again on the town website. Next item is town accountant, business manager Stephanie Frontier is going to discuss the new changes and updates and things that we've accomplished.
Good evening, Stephanie Frontier, town accountant, business manager. I figured now is a good time to give the board an update on my last 2 months here in the town of West Newbury. It's been very challenging but rewarding to say the least. When I
Hey,
came
Stephanie,
on,
if you can get closer, probably. Great.
when I came
Thanks.
on board, there was a significant backlog of items that had to be complete. That being said, I had to learn SoftWrite software inside and out, and that is a town's old financial software, as well as learn Vadar. I've come to realize that part of Vadar was not set up fully to its potential. There was bits and pieces left out from behind the scenes. So when you're posting an expense, it was not hitting the right control accounts in the back end. So I've been working with Vadar to fix all that. I've made significant progress. I'm still working on that as we speak. I've completed the Department of Revenue Schedule A, which took a long time, a lot longer than I anticipated, because I had to learn where the numbers were coming from in SoftWrite. And unfortunately, our new account structure in Vadar is very different. So to kind of marry up the account numbers and figure out what is what so that we're reporting things correctly to the state was a big project, but I'm happy to say it's been completed. I'm just waiting. I know it only takes a few months to hear back from Department of Revenue on that once they finalize it. I've also standardized the AP vendor warrants.
Stephanie, just to go back on, so what is Schedule A?
Okay.
So we know what that is.
So Schedule A is reporting all of the prior fiscal year's expenses and revenues across the board. So you'll have general fund, you'll have special revenue articles, grants. It's pretty much everything, all expenses and revenues, and categorizing them in separate categories, whether they're state revenue, federal revenue, general government, public safety, also enterprise fund is recorded in there.
So it's kind of like a profit and loss only for a government.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. So we typically wait until the auditors are done to start that process. I ran all reports from the old financial system and started typing them in. I also made several reclass entries within that to ensure things were reported in the correct buckets. Making sure Chapter 90 was recorded correctly, federal funding, lots of the police grants, just making sure everything matched up. And I really wanted to tick and tie and have full ownership of that. So I did a bunch of different reclass entries to ensure we were completely matching up to the reports that I had from our prior financial software. So it did take me several weeks, to say the least, juggling a bunch of different things, but that is definitely complete. The next big thing I really worked on was standardizing the AP vendor warrants. In the past, it's a very busy desk on the town accountant desk. So it was, when I first came in, I took a few weeks to kind of see what was going on. And I wanted to streamline processes so that every Wednesday I'm printing checks. So that way there, if Angus or myself are at a meeting, we always know checks will be printed and we can review the warrant process. That's been very helpful for our outside vendors. So when they're calling in, I can ensure, when I'm going to cut the checks, et cetera. They seem to like that. And I've noticed the last several weeks, Jenny has been very good in helping ensure that none of our invoices are late, which has been a huge, huge help for the department. I've also worked on the police detail revenues. In the past, all of the detail checks were going directly to the town accountant, and the town accountant would make a copy of it, send it over to the police department to their admin support. They're the ones that initially bill the police details, so typically those checks should go over to the original source where they were billed from. So that's the process that we're doing now. I then marry up the revenue postings to ensure that vendors are paying on time for those, and that process seems a lot more smoother, considering she sends out the bills from her system. So that's helped out tremendously. I worked with a town manager extent.
What happens when that particular system, like someone, you're building, you're building the town of Methuen or something for one of our officers. So what happens when they don't pay? What happens?
So we ensure that they pay, and then the officer gets paid as well from the outside detail. So we're not paying those directly out of our general fund. They go into an agency account, and when the revenue comes in, at the end of the day, it should be a net zero effect. The issue is if the other communities aren't paying.
So does the officer get paid like the next week, and we might might not get paid for 6 months. Does that ever happen or no?
No.
Okay.
I have not seen that happen the last couple months. It could happen in the future, but hopefully it does not. I don't want to be paying officers if we're not going to receive in the revenue. Typically, we pay the officers when they're working in town right away, and then outside vendors, we ensure that the revenue comes in first, is what I've seen.
Oh, the revenue comes in first.
Yep,
Okay.
we bill them first, and that's what I've seen.
You
I don't know.
bill them and you wait for receipt
Yep.
of
And then-
payment before you pay
Yep.
before the officers pay. Okay, I was
And
going
then
to
the-
ask how the balance worked because it seemed like you could get ahead of yourself.
Yeah, and then the
ahead
police
of the-
admin
yeah,
turns
okay.
in the original detail slip along with the proof, and then that's when I put it on the payroll. We get paid bi-weekly, so that's when it will go on. And that's a way to ensure that at the end of every fiscal year, we will not be hit with a deficit on our free cash for outstanding police details. In my prior communities, we used to not always do it that way, and we would get hit with $45,000 to $50,000 deficit for outside companies, et cetera, that wouldn't pay. So I haven't seen that yet, and hopefully that won't happen. We don't seem to have a lot of detail activity, which is a good thing. I've also worked extensively with the town manager. He's been a wonderful asset for me to learn the ropes and learn everything as quick as possible here in West Newbury. We started working, he's reviewed with me the financial policies and kind of the direction that we want to go in the future. So that's one of my main things that I want to focus on going forward. But I've kind of reviewed everything and met with Angus on that. Just a beginning start on that. I also, going forward, I realized when I got here, Harper's, we were not using the software to its full potential. So I thought it would be great to have a Harper's rep come in and show us what the system's capable of. That being said, I realized that for payroll, we could actually have orgs and object codes put into employees' profiles. And then when I go to extract the payroll, I could actually import that right into our Vadar system. And that's how I've typically done it in the past. So Angus called and had Harper's come in. We had a nice meeting, and now we want to get all the accruals in for employees. So vacation, sick, and personal time, as well to show on employees' paychecks. Right now, it's done all in Excel spreadsheets. So we're going to be moving forward with that as well, which will really cut back on a lot of the manual labor.
So in other words, it'll show you've got 1.5 personal days left or something like that.
Yes.
On the pay stub.
Yep.
Okay.
Right now, we're charging the personal time to employees, et cetera, but we're also maintaining a separate Excel spreadsheet for all employees. So this will be really helpful, especially if someone is leaving. In the past, it's been taking some time to see how much vacation time is left, et cetera. So it will always be tracked right here in the system, and we can go
Okay,
through
so
it
it's
to
up
make
to
sure.
date.
Yeah,
Okay.
which will, it's going to be labor intensive in the beginning, but in the end, it's going to help out tremendously. I also, coming up, okay, sorry.
Say, some people know to the minute what they have, but other people don't pay attention at all. Like, I don't, someone says, I haven't looked at how many sick days I have in years. So do people have the employees been informed that this is our accounting and so that they're happy with the numbers too? Because some people may not even know what their numbers are.
No, the first step is basically to get our records current and then to reconcile with all the employees, because this kind of redundant tracking system of this Excel spreadsheet is something that hadn't been kept current. So we're having to go back through all payrolls to get it to where it's current. And then we'll send that around to all employees and say, this is what our records show in terms of your current.
Well,
approvals,
that's
and
what
then
I was driving
yeah,
at.
so
We
over the
should
course
give
of the
them an
coming weeks-
opportunity
Oh,
so
by
that
all means.
everybody's
absolutely,
happy
yeah.
with the numbers.
Yeah.
We don't want to key anything into Harper's until we know that everyone's in agreement.
That was my point.
That's a time intensive.
Exactly, and we'll be able to go back through prior timesheets to ensure if there's a discrepancy and work with the employee to make sure that we're all in agreement before we
I mean,
do
it might be
anything.
like a systemic error that went back 8 years or something. Who
Well,
knows?
you
Yeah.
may remember that, yeah, actually, I'm sure, Archie, you will remember, I think this was Rick before your time, but I may have even given you a copy of this memo at some point, but the actual math on the accrual for the qualified part-time employees, because it varies depending on a proportion of, their hours per week divided by 40, and it varies based on their tenure. So it's different down to the fourth decimal place for all of our qualified part-time employees. So just figuring out that math was something that I did that my first month here, but no one ever had. So there was like, if you talk to different people, they would have different understanding of how time was accruing. And then you also have the factor of the personnel policy talks about accrual in terms of days, but as a practical matter, you need to do it in terms of hours. So all of that, that what my mantra has become around the office.
You love that.
We're trying to make the simple stuff simple, because right now we're spending more time on payroll, more time on some of these things than we should, because we're, like Stephanie said, we're not fully utilizing the software. But we can't just say, let's fully utilize it and just flip a switch.
Right,
We
right.
have to.
You got to load it with all the data to have a valid starting point.
Exactly.
So will all those factors, the different factors for accruals, will they automatically update going forward?
Yes.
Not only based the current rate, but say if an accrual is dependent upon seniority, will that have to be manually changed, or will that is there a way to set that up so that it changes automatically as their tenure changes?
So within Harper's, there is a lot of capability. You
Yeah.
can set up individual accruals. So
Yeah.
some people here have contracts. You can do individual. You can do by unions. You can do by class of employees.
yeah.
So once all the employees have different classes, full-time,
Yeah.
part-time, et cetera, it's all driven by that. But you can also do it at an individual level.
Yeah, boy, that's great too, because you pull the opportunity for inevitable human error.
Exactly.
Because it happens no matter to all of us, And
the reporting
yeah,
functionality is
Yeah.
really good once we get this in as
Yeah.
well. We can extract into Excel. We can also do PDFs. And then I think it's still good practice to have the managers keep, a running Excel
Yep.
thing. But this will be good to match it up as well. Just in case there's an error of someone keying it, getting into Harper's. That way we can always make sure everything's ticking and tying is just good practice.
And I also really like, this is the first employer I've ever worked for where you didn't have your accruals on your pay stub. And initially I thought, let's fix that. And then I realized it's a big onion that
Yeah,
it's more
yeah.
complicated when you peel it back. But part of what's so appealing about that is every time someone gets their paycheck, that's an opportunity to reconcile it, instead of just this quarterly, which is what the practice had been, is 4 times a year, and really it didn't seem that was done necessarily quarterly. It might have been less frequently. So by that point, you've got a research project that could. I have personally spent in the instance of departing employees many hours of time, just reconciling one employee.
Yeah.
It's totally inefficient. Now, part of that we were short-staffed, but the point is, we're working to get to a point where the simple stuff is simple, which will allow us to put more of our time toward the higher level stuff that we're all focused on.
Great.
And one thing that's nice is I worked extensively in my last employer, actually moving the town to Harper's. I spent over a year doing that, so I have a lot of skills there and able to work with Harper's, which is great because their software, there are so many different things that you can utilize within there that's helpful for the community.
Just as one example, and I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole, but it's a great one, especially as we're in the union discussions and things, is you can use this software as a way to track the different certifications or licenses that employees have, which in some cases translates to financial incentives. So rather than right now, I might have an Excel sheet for this, or she might have one for that. Like, we want to centralize that data so it's good data, but also that the entire finance department has access to it. It's not just something that I have on my desktop that Stephanie might not even know I'm even tracking. So we're going in a good direction, but it's very labor intensive to build all that out. Because I think when I started a year and a half ago, or when you started, these are the kinds of things coming in you just assume are already in place, because most organizations they are, but they're not.
Yep.
So we'll get there.
Another thing that I'd like to start doing going forward, my focus is going to be on taking some municipal human resource training that will fall into the business manager aspect of my position. I've already actually recently, I haven't talked to the town manager quite yet, but I've been working with Maya. There's some different programs that we can get the employees involved in at no cost at all to the town. And it's great for employee engagement, et cetera, but I'd like to attend some trainings. Also, I will continue to work on the chart of account setup. There is a lot involved with that. If I could spend all day for a week doing it, it would get done quicker, but unfortunately, I have to continue to multitask, which is great, so other things don't get put on hold. I also will be supporting the FY21 budget process, including adding the new elements to the FinCom booklet. I had met with the Finance Committee, I would say maybe a month ago. I could be off with my timing because it's been really busy here, and there's some new initiatives that they'd like to see in the booklet.
So how will the people at town meeting are used to seeing there's whatever, the line item for highway, sidewalk, or trees, whatever. So now we have different accounts. How would we be able to look back at the last year's and the approved and versus now we're starting with the new chart of accounts? How are we gonna, for the sake of we know how it is as for the town, but how will the voters be able to compare previous years with the new years, because we have a different list of accounts? How are you gonna be able to do that?
So the naming structure is the same. It's the account number structure that is different for the most part.
But aren't you going to have, say, new accounts?
Well, so one
In other words, you might have like pencils for seven, I just made it up.
Yeah.
Pencils for 7 different departments which didn't exist before. So how is that gonna work?
So this is, and Stephanie and I have spent a lot of time talking about this, of the difference between accounting from a week to week versus budgeting. And so the idea is to have, within the budgeted lines, once something's approved by town meeting, that sets the budget. So if one department has just 2 lines, salaries and expenses, that's the approved budget. If DPW has 14 lines, that's the approved budget. And that's when you get into the interdepartmental line item transfers. It's based on those approved lines.
Right.
But let's say, for instance, on town building operating expenses, we want to get a better handle on what's driving those expenses, because that's a big bucket of money, but it's covering, the library, the public safety building, this building, and so on, social sailors and so forth. So what we're working toward, I'm not going to say we're there yet, but is getting like a suffix added to the account number so that we're tracking the expenses per facility. So we would be able to run reports on, within that town building operating expense, what is that comprised of? What are those expenses comprised of from these different facilities?
But for the town meeting, you'll be able to collapse those back
exactly
into the.
Yep.
Exactly. And actually, I did some of that last year within the budget process, where more granular detail was provided to the Finance Committee and to this board in not in all departments, but some of the departments, that when we got the actual budget that was proposed was rolled up into a finer detail. Why I did that for some and not others is in some departments, especially those with long tenured department heads, we had data that was good going back because they'd always been budgeting things, that way. But for, some departments, if they don't have that level of data for the prior years, then it's not apples to apples, and it starts to become more confusing for people looking at the budget.
So, I don't know, Open Space Committee, say, they might just have one line item. So on the town meeting budget, they're not gonna have 7 different things there this time.
No, and in fact, last year in putting together the FinCom booklet with the finance committee, I worked very closely with them and with Gary Forbes in particular on exactly how that information was presented, and even to the level of presenting a list of, okay, this is how many approved budget lines there are for each section of the budget, and does the finance committee want to see that expand, contract, or stay the same? And in general, they were favorable of either keeping things the same or even making it less, fewer lines, because if they thought that would present more clearly. So what you saw with last year's budget.
So what's the plan?
Well, I think the proposed budget is going to resemble what you're used to seeing. I want to keep things, consistent. Even though on the back end of it, we want to get to where on the accounting side we'll be able to run reports to a finer grain of detail. So, for instance, Wayne and his, how he's coding, we're not there in terms of having like account numbers assigned for all those subcategories, but he's noting on the invoice, what facility was that bill for, so that.
I'm just thinking of
Yes.
Having gone through like a lot of electric bills there not too long ago, that could be a lot of work. There's like 50 different electric meters, which one goes with which facility and so forth. That might be a lot of work.
Yeah. Does the board have any more questions? It's kind of.
So will your capability, say you want to add, with the new system of accounts, say you want to add more, you're not happy with the breakdown of them 2 years from now. Can you add to these, or have you made your decision and this is sort of it?
Oh no, the chart of accounts is going to be a work in progress. I'm continuing to edit some accounts. I've noticed in the past some of the general ledger accounts are hit directly instead of charging directly to an expense line, which I'm used to. So as I hash things out, there will be some small changes here and there, so that this is always going to be a work in progress. Also, when you're looking at the ledger history report right now, you'll see a lot of the zeros at the end of the accounts. That's what Angus is talking about. I can assign specific program codes that are driven by, we can do buildings, we can do all sorts of things, and we can run reports just on those to segregate different things as well, which is very helpful. We use a lot of program codes. You're not going to see it. This is a general fund report that I've submitted here for the expenses.
So is there say a system in the numbers? In other words, all salary lines have I don't know.
Yes, a 5-1.
Or is there a way it works like that?
Yes, it does. So all salary lines should be starting with a 5-1. Expense line should be a 5-2 or a 5-4 for the most part. Capital project line should be a 5-8 structure, and that follows the UMIS account structure. Some of these you're going to see a little bit differently because unfortunately they were already set up when I got here. So I will have to work to do a journal entry to move some things out and move it into the correct object code. Those are object codes that I'm speaking of.
So that's something you can remedy all of those inconsistencies. Yeah.
And all expense lines start with a 5, and you'll see that revenue lines, object codes always start with a 4.
Stephanie, I know I mentioned this before, but maybe just the reserve fund, maybe because money comes from there and goes somewhere else. It just on that, I know it's always 60, and it's not.
Well, that's interesting because under as you know, the finance committee did approve that paid school food steamer.
Right.
And so that's the delta between 60 and the number you see here. And
That's
Right,
how,
but allocated should be 60.
no,
it
see,
doesn't
that's-
change. That's how the system works, unfortunately. It's a database system. And that's kind of one of my biggest complaints on the system is
but
how it
also
shows.
that- I think, didn't we look at, that goes back to the actual legislation of how these reserve fund transfers.
So we can't charge directly out of a reserve fund. I can only do,
can't.
I cannot. I can only do a transfer for wherever it's voted to. So you'll see the transfer out and a
That-
transfer
so
in.
That, where that went to, that allocation will go up.
Yes.
And then
so-
get subtracted from that.
Yeah. And
Yes.
this ends up being one of the thornier issues that we're trying to sort out in terms of how to present the budget. Because when you have that happen, your original budgeted, you almost would need to add a second column.
That,
to your
exactly,
amended
yeah.
budget. But then there's a point at which there's too much data, especially when you're dealing with multiple years, 2 prior years, the current year. If you have, budgeted.
So that's just a
revised
quirk of
budgeted,
this
then
this
expended,
program.
that 3 columns of data for a single year is kind of overkill. But that's, and I don't have the answer yet for the FY21, but that's something we're working on.
Yes.
actively, Is how do we present the information in a way that's both consistent with our financial software.
What about an
consistent with what we voted.
intradepartmental transfer
Column.
where you went from salary to, I don't know, vehicle expenses, you moved between those. Does that change the allocated there too?
Well, interestingly, and so, Stephanie, you can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, I think how we would like to handle that going forward is that that expense could be coded to hit the other line item rather than overspending and then doing a budget amendment to basically make your actual spending, to make your budgeted spending correspond to your actual spending. It would be better to either to code the expense initially to the other account or to do a journal entry to reassign that expense to that account to basically bring the spending.
So you don't have one negative account? Yeah.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the
can't
way
have
things are handled, especially.
I'm sorry, I'm sort of getting us off in the weeds here. But.
It's okay.
I think we've lost our viewership.
Yeah.
But in terms of looking at last year's reports and how some of these things were handled, it does add some complication to the reporting because things are showing as line item adjustments that really probably should have just been journal entries. So we can't reach back and change those things, but it does create some challenges that we're working on how to present the information in a way that's both consistent with our internal accounting and will line up with what people see from the prior town meetings of what numbers they actually voted. Because I can promise you.
Exactly, because this you could change things around and people would never notice.
Right.
Really.
Right.
So, I know there's been some challenges and, I think we're making progress, so that's good.
Absolutely,
The fact
we're
that
making
we
a-
have this new chart of accounts and we're actually using it after all these years is good. It's taken a long time.
Yes, we're definitely making progress, and I have a long way to go, but I've definitely made a huge
Yeah,
dent
no, it's
in
great
what I
that,
have.
great that things are headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
I'm sure it feels gratifying all the way around.
Yeah, but I did, one of the takeaways I want the board to have from this meeting is, you see the complexity and,
Yeah.
and the amount, and Stephanie's desk, just obviously she sweats the details, that's why she's here. But I want to be clear, this isn't like a couple of weeks of work. This is like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
a lot of work to get to where we need to be. So, we just keep working hard and balance the day-to-day responsibilities with some of this kind of catch up, which is some of what's happening. Well, some of it's catch up and some of it's, implementing new software, taking better advantage of the software we have with Harper's, and really just trying to get the organization to to a higher level.
Is this part gonna make Tony Roselli happier, or?
Yeah, Tony's going to be much happier going forward. He couldn't be. Yes, we'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
That's good, yes.
Any more comments?
No,
Okay.
I'm great. That was
Okay.
good, Stephanie.
you,
Thanks,
Steph.
thanks a
Thank you very
lot.
much.
Stephanie, you can stick around for the next article or the next item, just briefly.
Next item is to authorize the town manager to establish and enact financial procedures to clarify and standardize routine financial operations.
Okay, so we're going to turn the clock back about 13, 14 months. A lot of work was gone toward the community compact policies, and you remember there was a point in the process when it became clear that there were these kind of broader financial policies, which the community compact and Mass DOR had recommended, all of which are very worthwhile. But there are all these other kind of day-to-day operational policies which former finance directors had put out over the years, and which staff had become very comfortable with, and that was what guided timesheets and AP warrants and expense reimbursements and those kinds of things. And so, we spent some time last winter trying to see if we should try to shoehorn those together, and I think it kind of drowned under its own weight, the collective weight of all of that. And so I think going forward, what is going to make sense is, we want to keep going with the community compact policies kind of as time allows, which is what we've been doing. But we really want to fill the void of these day-to-day operational procedures. It's not so much a policy thing as a procedural. And in particular, not just reminding people what procedures used to be in place, but with some of the changes that Stephanie has alluded to, and some of the things that have changed since I've been here, we'd like to basically put out some new procedural guidance to department heads and to boards, committees, and commissions to kind of standardize how and when invoices are submitted for payment, to standardize some of the protocols, especially on things like personnel, hiring, these kinds of things where with the new form of government, the personnel policies haven't been updated to reflect that new form of government. So there's some kind of administrative aspects of that that are important. One thing, I've talked with this board about a couple of times is a payroll change form, so that before a new wage is entered into the payroll system, that there be some standardized process where that gets put in. So what I'd like to do is, we've got some samples that Stephanie had from her prior jobs, and that our interim town accountant, who has a wealth of experience, he had some great sample procedures, and I'd like to put those out. I don't have them in my pocket now that are ready to go, but over the coming weeks, actually some of them, are pretty much, we just haven't written them up and sent them out. So, Mike thinks I'm being too cautious in coming to the board for your authorization to do that, because I think you feel that's kind of inherent in my authority. But I read, that my authority is qualified by, I'm charged with implementation of policies placed in my charge by the Board of Selectmen, where I would feel more comfortable if the board specifically says, yes, we understand that, at the policy level, that's the board's authority, but these day-to-day kind of procedural things, just to have something on the books to give me the blessing, so that when I put these out, they have standing, basically. Because at the end of the day, it's so I don't have specific language in front of you, but I hoped I might by tonight, but I didn't find time for that today. And I'd be happy to bring it back in a couple of weeks with some specific language, and that might be better. But that's where I'm going with this.
I don't see why we can't do that now.
Yeah, I don't either. We've sort of vested a huge amount of trust and responsibility, and we need to let you do what you're supposed to do. So, yeah. So,
I would make a motion to give the town manager the authority to implement day-to-day financial procedures as he so recommends.
and I'd second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
So Angus and Stephanie, if I could ask a favor, when you see some time where things are kind of stable, I'd love to spend an hour or a couple hours trying to better understand, just looking over your shoulder, essentially, maybe Stephanie, while you're and trying to understand a little bit about the accounting software. Because I have no personal experience in municipal finance, and I have not been on the FinCom. Archie, fortunately for him, had been. And it would help me a little bit in understanding the way the system, the way things work. So, if you see a window of opportunity where, that you think is good, just let me know, because I'm generally pretty flexible schedule-wise. Thanks.
Mike, you have to put your town clerk down. Okay. So the presidential primary is coming up, and the question at hand is for the board to just approve the town clerk's recommendation on establishing the place and procedures for early voting.
The state requires us, the board, to authorize a place and time for where early voting will take place. My recommendation is that we're required to have early voting hours during the hours that the town offices are open, which would mean an early voting period this year is from February 24th, which is a Monday, until February 28th, which is a Friday. So that the hours of operation I'm proposing for the town would be from 8 to 4:30, Monday through Thursday, from the 24th to the 27th, and from 8 to noon on Friday the 28th.
So then the election is after the 28th?
That's correct. The election is on March 3rd, which would be the 28th is a Friday, March 3rd would be the following Tuesday. Okay. In addition, the selected place, I'd like to basically utilize what we did for the 2008 state election to set up in the lobby. What we did at the last time was to set up 3 different, dual voting booths, so you'd have up to 6. I establish a table down there, and I have election workers so that when when individuals come in to vote, they're right there. This was, I think, very efficient for the operation of town offices, because they weren't. You had people walking the halls looking to place to vote, and it was right there. It was very convenient. I would say that I got very high approval ratings for operating that way, and it was easy and quick, and people enjoyed it. So what your obligation is to basically establish the time and the place as I recommended. Then I'll send that into the state, and we'll be good to go. I'll also point out is that, and you're going to be going over this in the next agenda about the, so I might as well talk about it, about future warrant articles, is that we're requesting a special town meeting article for $3,800 to pay for the expenses for this one, although, and also for the presidential, which is going to occur in obviously November of 2020. And that's going to be 2 weeks of early voting. For the extra expenses that I undergo for that, And also be aware that all those expenses are reimbursable. In 2018, we appropriated $2,000, but we got back $2,300 as what we had expended. So that will also be a request at the special town meeting. And I wanted it on the special because I wanted the money to be available, because I'd be using some of the money that I would have paid for the town election,
Oh,
for the early voting for the February election.
So we need to move.
so
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yep.
that sentence right there, Rick, the last one.
Okay. I move to designate the town office building lobby as the early voting location for the town for the presidential primary and the presidential election in November. I thought we wanted to do this for the, that is for the primary. Okay, I'm sorry. And then the time frame
24th
is
to
the 24th
To
to the 28th from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Or actually the 24th to the 27th from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. and the 28th from 8 o'clock
To
to
noon.
noon.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Mike, is there also a primary in September?
Yes, but they haven't designated any any early voting for that.
Okay.
When the state passed the law, they did it for the presidential primary and for the presidential election. They also designated the date of the state primary to be September 1st,
Wow,
which will actually be before Labor Day.
wow.
They do that for federal reasons because they have to prepare the ballots for the presidential election at least 45 days. They have to actually send them to be available to be sent to voters at least 45 days prior to the election. And when when we used to do it in like the second week in September, there was just
Too tight.
too tight. You couldn't, especially if you had a recount, because then you just couldn't do it.
Next item is just basically an informational item, review of the valuation and tax rate changes for other towns in the region provided by the chief assessor, and just sort of to give some good news. So these are the mindful that these are all averages, but the average West Newbury tax bill went up $50.47, and other towns in one other town had actually their average tax bill went down, Swampscott, but most of the other the average tax bill for all the towns in Essex County went up $266, as opposed to West Newbury only going up $50. So I know our taxes are not the lowest in the Commonwealth by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it shows that the town employees, the committees and boards are trying to keep things under control. This is a good thing. So $50 is not we were the third lowest in the Essex County for the amount of change, and that's in dollars. In percent, the tax bill went up less than the average tax bill went up less than 1%, 0.61%. So that's good. And the average tax bill for all of Essex County went up 3.5%. So I think for FY20, we're doing very well.
It's also worth noting that relative to the other Pentucket communities, we're substantially less in terms of both percent and dollar value. So that's nice.
Not at all.
in
Yeah.
terms of the
Well,
Yeah, in
it's
terms
a
of
dollar
the,
value
yeah,
increase.
the delta, the change, yeah.
So, immediately preceding, this meeting, Rick and I and Angus and other, people from, the Kentucky area, met with Congressman Moulton. We had a good discussion. We talked about, some things that perhaps the federal government could do to help us, with, infrastructure problems, especially related to, the, sewage outflows during rainstorms, so-called CSOs. Some of them originating in, the state of New Hampshire because that's where the Merrimack River starts. So, we had a good long discussion about that, and recognizing that it's, been a problem. The congressman is aware of it and has been working and, collaborating with people in New Hampshire to try to address that, situation. We also talked about, is there a way in some fashion that the federal government can deal with the, recycling problem? It's a big problem for all municipalities in the entire United States, and a big problem, but, just, he's aware of it, he's aware of that too, and another thing that the whole country has to work on. Other issues related to energy production, what else, Rick? What else did we talk?
Well, I mean, quite honestly, I was focused on these batteries right now.
Energy production.
Yeah, that's right, energy production
On
by
a
these
small
batteries,
scale.
by these pesky little batteries. But did you mention the PFAS and all? Yeah. There were multiple issues relative to the Merrimack, just not just CSOs, but also the PFAS issue, and then a little off topic for us was discussion brought up by Lenny Muir, our state rep, was issues related to dredging. Beach nourishment essentially, which is not our problem, but that was just part of the conversation. I say it's not. It's only,
Well, that's Lenny's district.
yeah, exactly. It's peripherally our problem, but
So that's, I think that was it.
yeah, it was good. It was good.
Productive,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
We got our points across.
Right. Yeah.
Jen.
Did they, that was a closed meeting, I tried to attend it. Did they cite the reason why it was closed?
Actually, the door was open most of the time.
They wouldn't let me go in.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh.
Did they cite an open meeting law exemption for why that was closed?
No, but we specifically posted it because there was going to be a quorum there, and I'm not sure why that ended up closed. We were unaware, quite honestly. The door was open.
No one told us that no one could come in.
Yeah, and the door.
That was not on our part.
The door was open most of the meeting. It was closed when somebody came in who was
not interested.
Right, and it just became clear that having the door open had become a distraction. So sorry you didn't get in. Oh, yeah, you got a card. Yeah, I have a card too. I like it, letting other people draw their wallet faster.
Her name was Kelly Bovio, Bovio. She's the regional director for Congressman Moulton.
Thank you.
Next item is a preview of upcoming attractions, warrant articles for the April 27th special and annual town meeting.
So this was the supplemental package that we sent out over the weekend. you have that handy, Archie?
I don't have it printed, I think I have it in my phone. I read it all, I just don't have a paper copy. Excuse me, sorry.
We got it right here. Here's an extra copy. So, as we've done with prior town meeting cycles, this is not etched in stone by any means. This is just my attempt to let you know what's on my radar, some of which has come from this board, some of which has come from other sources, just to give you an earlier idea of what we might be looking at for the town meeting. Obviously, the selectmen set the warrant, and so it'll be up to you what is not on the warrant, but this is a summary of what I know to be coming our way, as well as potential articles that may or may not. And tonight, obviously the board can take it whatever direction you wish, but my intent tonight is not to get into asking the board for make decisions on potential warrant articles, which you would not want to include. It's more just to share information, see if there's anything you think I ought to be tracking that I'm not tracking, or if you have any questions on what's listed here. I'm happy to take it whatever direction you like.
I had a question for town council related to the retroactive, I guess you would say, gas bill. So is that, how is that gonna work? And this is actually 2017, so this would have been in the 2017 part of it at least, it would be in the FY 2017, which is 3 years ago. And we're getting the bill now. How does that work?
Obviously, there was a dispute with the bill, and what I basically characterized it as what we call a novation, where basically is you have a past amount, and now there's a dispute as to the pay, and now we're basically figuring a new amount that we know, and so the amount becomes due upon that time when there's an agreement as to that
So
type of payment.
It becomes a new bill at that
Becomes a bill that's being presented to us then.
But are they billing us for something?
Yeah, the answer is that occurred, yeah.
It's way late, and I'm just playing devil's advocate, that's all.
No, that's fair, but I mean, the thing is that, the service was provided, and, that we did use the materials. And it's not unusual sometimes that you get a service, a gas bill, and but it'll go over into the next fiscal year because, that's when you get the bill.
Right.
Even though it's for
3
something.
years. That's
I know,
Right.
I know. But the way I look at it again is because they sent us bills or didn't send us bills, in the past, is that this is basically our agreement, which, is basically makes it a new agreement. So what they've done is they've waived any fees with regard to late payment or something like that. They would, by statute, actually have the right to charge 1% per month on that. But then again, the whole reason that
1% per month between the time they billed us and the time we paid, not from the time that we used the fuel, though.
No. They billed us actually in a timeout last April. That was when they. No, last April. It was last April 2018. That's when we got the bill.
Yeah.
For prior usage.
Right.
Right. So, and then they added on from there, and we finally sent a complaint into the state utilities, and that
And they finally responded.
Yeah, we sent multiple.
Yeah.
Many phone calls. Eventually, we got a certified letter to National Grid, and then eventually to the Department of Public Utilities, at which point we got their attention. And Rick sat in on the meeting where not with a meter, but with a transponder, basically, or that might not be the right.
Yeah, no, that's the right word. It was a transponder.
So that there was not a question as to the accuracy of the reading, it just hadn't been.
And the thing that was frustrating too is.
Send physical bills that said you only owe 37 cents or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually,
And
Zero.
the time when the transponder wasn't working.
yeah, actually, they sent
only
physical
send
bills
the
that,
infrastructure charge or something?
yeah, it was just the customer charge, the monthly customer
Right.
charge for 17 months. That was all we received. Yeah.
But, so you did
Yeah.
get those?
Yeah, we should
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
And they didn't, nothing got triggered that something's funny here?
Well, it got triggered at our end, and that's why.
Yeah, we spent months trying to tell them that we owed them more money, and it took them 4 months plus. Of course, then again, that was a time they were a little bit busy.
Oh, okay.
Is that so? Yeah.
Wait, why were they? That's not Columbia. What do you?
Yeah, but everybody was busy
They
then.
were involved too.
They were involved too, so they were a little bit busy. Yeah, I mean, and so we did. You know, we were asking them for a while, and part of it was because of Rick trying to figure out our gas usage and thinking they had zero. In their
Look at how Rick, you improved the building so
we use no gas. It's
very efficient.
could have gone on forever too, you know. It's like,
Well, the thing is that
wouldn't caught it
in their defense too, is that it's not unusual for them to have zero bills. If you have something like a gas meter that's set up to heat a pool, you know, you'll have 6 months where you won't get it. You won't get it. And so there are bills that are seasonal and that for a period of time will not generate any gas.
and another bad news thing is that they would never pick up the discrepancy in gas usage because the leakage out of their system probably far exceeds what they were missing from us.
That's right.
That's not a good thing.
I know.
Yeah, this is a drop in the.
Yeah, right.
So there is quite a lot more paper backup on this one. I put in just the summary stuff for the purpose of tonight's packet, especially if it's going out late. I didn't want to provide.
No, is this one of the bills that we'll have to, so we won't have to have a 90% vote on this, okay?
No, it's becoming a bill due this year.
Okay.
But they did break it out for us into 2 fiscal years so that we could show which was associated with which fiscal year.
And really, that was, if I understood, that was largely, if not entirely, the result of our interest in reporting with the green communities.
Yeah, no, the only reason why we ever noticed it was because of the online program Mass Energy Insights, and going through the numbers in there and seeing 17 months of no usage. It doesn't make sense. How could that be? How could we go through a winter without heat?
Let's see, any others we wanted particularly? I guess there is will be an article related to, because there's an additional student at Essex Aggie Technical School that we had only anticipated one student, and now there's a second one. Anyway, we know if that's going to continue on.
We expect it will continue on with 2, and it could even be a 3rd student next year. I talked at length with the business manager at Essex because I wanted to understand what more could we be doing on budgeting to try to get this right. Obviously, the student population, they don't finalize that for the year until October 1st.
Right.
We approve our budget in April, so we put in the budget based on historically. There's never, going back 15 years, there was never more than 1 student.
When did they know who's going to be there, and like applications and stuff? They must have to apply in the preceding spring.
They do, and I'd have to go back in my conversation notes because I took detailed notes when we spoke. But it sounds like even October 1st isn't the last date because someone could come in after that.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
so there's a lot of variability. So
Well-
what I talked with Stephanie about, and this would be good to talk about in this budget season, because what I'm going to recommend is that we keep that we budget, based on when we prepare the annual budget, we take the best information we have and budget for that number of students, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, or 4. And then in the fall town meeting, I think we should make it a standard operating procedure to keep a placeholder article on the special town meeting in the fall. If we don't need it, we pass over it. But when we're closing out the warrant for that fall town meeting, even then, we won't know definitively what the enrollment is. So since the town meeting's not typically till late October or even early November, by then you pretty much do. So that
Oh,
way,
then we could take it off.
exactly. Yeah. We just pass it over with no action. But that way, if that had been on in the fall, we could have gotten this done in the fall within the current fiscal year, instead of having to go to them and have them delay the amount due because we can't get it appropriated for April. They were totally understanding. I mean, towns deal with this all the time. But basically, I think the way we should budget for this is to carry the number, best guess number,
Will do they at least they give us the one person number though? They have that nailed down, don't they?
It's not nailed down. It's estimated because I don't know if I included the budget in here, but I think the amount I carried in the current budget was 17. I know it was 17 something.
Okay.
And that was based on the best estimate at that time.
Oh, all right.
The actual per pupil is lower than that.
Well, the thing is, that with only 1 or 2 students anyway, somebody might change their plans. The student, right. Right. I mean, if we had 100 students there, it'd be easier to be relatively accurate. But when you only have 1 or 2 students, you can easily be off by 50% or 100%.
And the other possibility is you have family, the student who's attending there now,
right.
but then moves.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's what
to West
what
Newbury. His family moves to West Newbury, but still attends the school.
Right. So it can go up or down really easily. Yeah.
So that's why I like the idea of just a standing fall.
I think that sounds like a good idea. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
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 Just to understand there's variability associated.
Right. Yeah. And also, if it becomes sort of almost part of the standard, format, then we're less likely to miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as of when we prepared the annual budget last spring, there was no reason, whether from them or from our numbers, to expect anything more than 1. So it wasn't until we got this invoice, in November that we realized the issue.
Related to the pictometry, I always have a problem with this. We do this a lot, and do we get anything more than we had got 3 years ago? I sound like a curmudgeon, but this particular budget thing is always kind of bothered me that I don't know that every 3 years we're getting additional information out of that. And a lot of things you can get from, this is once every 3 years, we can get more up-to-date material from that than from Google Earth. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
I'm just being a curmudgeon.
Yeah. I mean, my understanding, I've looked at the pictometry. I guess they've changed the name of it. It's not called pictometry anymore, I think, right? But in any event, there's better resolution because it's done from an air flight. Better resolution than you're going to get from a satellite, and it does show things that are relevant to the assessors and potentially to the building inspector and potentially to the planning board. I mean, when I was on the planning board, it was when they first started using it, and I remember looking at it and thinking what a cool tool it was. But then I was only on the board for another year or two after that. So,
I've been
yeah,
complaining about it for 20
I know.
years.
I've heard you.
I'm just not gonna change.
So do we need to? Oh, that's going to be voted on at town meeting anyway. So we don't. Yeah, we don't need
No,
to
we're
do
not
anything
voting
now.
on it.
Yeah,
Just,
yeah.
just commenting.
Just complaining.
Yeah.
Back in my day,
Right.
we didn't always.
Right.
We wanted to know
Go
something.
around.
We'd go right there and we'd
Going
look.
around on the donkey of the
Right.
accountant. So, Angus, I'm interested in your thoughts on the possibility of the town charter adoption. Tell me your thoughts on this, and you think it's we have enough on our plate, or this is a massive undertaking to start right
We
now.
do, and I don't intend to, by including this, backup, I don't intend to say that I think we definitely ought to do this. I think we definitely ought to be talking about whether to do this, whether this spring or at some point in the future. I do think the town would benefit from a charter. Most towns have them, and it really is, the foundational document of town government. I think there are a lot of aspects of the manager legislation that we've seen in the 18 months I've been here that are unclear and create a lot of inefficiency. I mean, just the example we talked about earlier tonight, on who reports who and these kinds of things. It's a real impact on the efficiency, which I think was part of the objective of creating the form of government in the first place. Some of which I really feel is lost because of a lack of clarity, and part of that is because the legislation references other legislation and is also deferential to other kind of bylaws and policies. So you really have to absorb a lot of different,
It's not all in one place.
It's not all in one place. So I think, and with that, I think even if, in instances where we've arrived at clarity between myself, the board, and town council, there's still a learning curve elsewhere in the community, whether, with the staff or boards, committees, commissions, of how things work, who's in charge of what, that I think are not helpful. I think the town would benefit from a clear framework on how the town is run. So I don't know that establishing a charter commission is the right move. I think it is something to think about. Even if it is the right move, whether this is the time to do it is a real question. I did want to just include the backup in here because it's something we've been. I've been bringing up since my first 6 weeks on the job, because it didn't take me long to figure out that there are really core questions that are just not clear and that we've had to puzzle through almost. If you go through almost every, I don't know about almost every meeting, but at least every month or two, there's some new question or set of questions that we need to puzzle through, and it's very inefficient, and I don't think it realizes all of the benefits that a town manager form of government could realize, and also, I mean, I've been, whether it ends up being a town manager form or a town administrator form or whatever else, those options are available to the town, and there are distinctions there, and the way things are set up, it really is more of an administrative form of government, which is fine, but I feel like we ought to use the words we mean, and so right now I think there's kind of a distance between what we call it and what it is in practice. In fact, with Stephanie here being new, coming from other organizations, she's constantly like, kind of boggled about the number of things that I don't have authority on, because she sees my title and says, "But you're the town manager." I said, "Yeah, but not really. I mean, really." That's my title, but in terms of the authority is not there. So I think it's something that would, you know, bandwidth-wise, there's a real question as to whether this would be the time to take it on, but I think it ought to be part of the discussion. And I think at some point, at a very minimum, we ought to kind of try to set out clearly what is the form of government we have as it is now, and try to get that information shared more broadly. Because, you know, when you talk to a lot of different people, and I'm speaking in particular about staff and boards, commissions, people who are part of the town government, they have very different ideas about what it actually means. And I think that's not a surprise when you actually read the legislation, because it's not, you know, in a lot of respects, it's really not clear.
So in terms of talking about bandwidth, you know, at some point we should probably have some grand discussion about what else is on our plate. What other things do we see coming up in the next year and a half, or 2 years, and fit in, you know, figure out where do we think we have the bandwidth, or when do we think we have the bandwidth to? Because it's not going to be an overnight process, but you know, but it's not going to get done unless you start at some time. So,
right.
So maybe give some serious thought to when can we actually start it. I mean, assuming the conclusion is that we need to, but you know, my inclination is, from, you know, the relatively little bit that I've read, is that it's something that we probably ought to do at some point.
My only comment is it's a big undertaking.
Right.
Once we start it, we're in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, with the commission form, I mean, a different approach that sometimes taken that doesn't need a town approval and is not as binding a decision. Whereas, as you see for the charter commission, once that's appointed, there's a set timeline, a set solution. But you know, sometimes they'll have a charter committee, which is more just a regular committee. You appoint it, you provide them a charge, they come back, provide their recommendations.
So that's
a non-binding.
That's non-binding.
That's non-binding, yeah. And plenty of towns have done that. Other towns will do a town government study committee, which is, you know, and that doesn't even presuppose that you're going to end up at a charter. So I think there could be merit from some of those. Part of what I found is, you know, for instance, you know, take the personnel policies are a great example. Since those haven't been amended to reflect the town manager form of government, there's all kinds of ways in which they don't really answer key questions that come up in the administration of the town. So one we dealt with a lot in my first couple of months here was the process of amending job description. There's no policy that sets that out. So we kind of worked, you know, myself, the board, town council, and came up with something that I think makes sense, but it's still not adopted policy. That's something that, you know, I think as recently as 2 weeks ago, I met with the library director who hadn't been here during all of that, and let her know, because she came to me with a question about job descriptions. I said, well, this is what we arrived at as a practice that makes sense, but you can't point to any bylaw policy that spells that out. So, you know, it's a fragmented system with a lot of gray. So just the work, you know, to I guess alternatively, you could say, well, let's put our attention to updating all of the current policies to reflect the form of government we do have, and we've made a lot of headway on that. The personnel policies are the biggest. I think the biggest thing, in my view, that we have not really started in a meaningful way, other than reactivating the personnel committee. But that's a huge bandwidth issue because they have no staff support other than me. So their ability to move things forward is relying on how many hours can I put forth. And I put a lot forth, but I haven't even scratched the surface compared to what needs to happen in that area of the organization.
Okay, item J, what, is there some, did I miss something? I didn't see it in the, what is that?
Oh, no, that's, yeah.
Yeah, so we had talked 2-3 weeks ago. You had actually mentioned that the MMA conference annual meeting was worthwhile going to, and I had been for the last 4 months. I've been getting a couple of emails a week, it seems, suggesting that from the MMA. MMA, by the way, is Mass Municipal Association, and suggesting that the annual meeting was a good thing to go to from an educational standpoint for a selectman. So I decided I would attend, and the personnel policy requires that the select board basically approve the expenditure. That's the way we talked about that, Mike. You're looking quizzical, but we meals and lodging had not for the conference itself, but for meals and lodging needed the board approval to do that. It's down in Boston. It's all day Friday and Saturday, and starts early Friday morning, starts early Saturday morning, and if you stay through the whole thing, probably ends at about 8:00 at night on Friday. So my intention was to stay down in Boston, and so therefore the board needs to agree with that. Now, I don't know if we have to vote on it. We're in kind of a quandary now because I probably can't vote on it.
I think you can invoke the rule of necessity in order to.
Yeah. Okay. Invoke the rule of necessity. I love that.
Well, I will say, we budget specifically.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it just the personnel policy mentions meals in lodging, and usually when people go down for a day, they just get their department head to approve it. There's nothing necessary, and then the town pays the expenses. But with regard to overnight lodging, we usually have the board, or it says board or appointing authority, approve it. So.
Oh, great idea.
Okay, I'm gonna go, but I'm only going Saturday.
Okay.
So I guess, and I don't know if it says with the approval. I don't know if necessarily is a vote, but just I guess if the board okays it,
Yeah.
So I make a motion that we approve Mr. Parker's attendance at the meeting and my attendance on Saturday.
Okay. My attendance at the meeting, including my overnight accommodation and meals while I'm down there.
All in favor?
Aye. Thanks.
For anyone that's still awake watching the meeting, Angus is going to give us the stormwater date. So that,
Do we want to approve these minutes?
Oh, there's minutes? Oh, I forgot. Okay. I make a motion to approve the minutes of December 18th and December 9th as written.
Second that?
All in favor?
Aye.
So item L is just an update on the MS4 stormwater permit. And the main thing here, first of all, I do like to just periodically put this before the board just so you're, to refresh your memory on the scope and scale of the mandate that we're subject to with EPA and all the work that goes into that. And again, as I always do when this is on, I commend the DPW director for bringing a tremendous, knowledge base and work ethic to this. There are a lot of things like O&M procedures for, how we sand and salt roads and how we maintain different facilities and how we handle the materials that we take out of catch basins and how we dispose of those, which, it's not good enough just to do the right thing. Everything's got to be documented ad nauseum.
Who looks at all of this stuff after it's done?
It's all part of what we have to submit with our annual report due every September.
I know, but who then reviews it? it seems impossible.
It does, and I've only been through one annual reporting cycle here, so I can't really speak to how it's done in Mass, but I know in Maine DEP, and I probably used this example before, it blew my mind what they looked at in our annual report. And, they would look at, how many, they would want you to quantify how many posts did you make to social media during that reporting year on stormwater, and how many likes and shares were there on those posts. It was unbelievable. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, there's, that's
You
gonna be a
have to
function
get,
of-
you have to get somebody that's just will like things automatically.
But anyhow,
Yeah, exactly.
the main takeaway I got from this settlement agreement between the EPA and Massachusetts and New Hampshire is this isn't a public comment period, but if this becomes final, this would push off till the year 3 of the permit, which would be FY21, the requirement to adopt a stormwater bylaw. I think that would be a really favorable change for this town. I met with Leah on this, and she agrees 100%, because I think we've already made improvements on how we're handling post-construction erosion control. As you know, we had the bylaw amendment that was approved at town meeting last spring. That was simply doing what the town had said it was going to do many years ago and just did never do. So what we did last spring was very remedial. To do a whole stormwater bylaw, I wouldn't like to have to shoehorn that into the next 2 months leading up to town meeting. It's a big deal. There's a lot of questions. Who's the enforcing authority? What are the staffing implications of that? Does it apply just within the so-called urbanized area, or do you apply it town-wide, which can be administratively somewhat simpler? There's a lot of questions that, if we have to tackle those in the next couple of months, are going to be a bandwidth issue.
I mean, can
so
we,
I'd love to have that go through.
Angus, just to interrupt you for a second, is that something that we can cut and paste a lot of stuff
Of
that
course.
people have already done?
Yeah, I've
we
already-
can't start that from scratch.
No. I have a template, and I have template regulations, but the 3 questions I just outlined are highly local questions. There's no template that's going to answer that question. Does the authority rest with the planning board or the Concom, or potentially even the Board of Health, or potentially even like an official like a DPW director? Does it apply townwide or just in the those are all localized things. But for example, you might say, okay, well, maybe the Concom is the permit granting authority. Well, how many new permits a year are they then issuing? And who's handling the public hearing notices? Who's writing the draft decisions? And who's enforcing the construction out in the field? And are we staffed properly for that? And what about projects that don't otherwise go to Concom because there's no impact on wetlands? Do they now have to go to Concom? Is that what we want? There's a lot of very important questions that if you answer them one way or the other will have a real impact. And you need time to think all that through, not just myself and a couple of department heads thinking it through, but the community thinking it through, because it has an impact. So I think if this goes through, it will buy us some time on that stormwater bylaw. That's the main change that I see from this as it relates to West Newbury. So I had already actually put this item on the draft agenda before I got the news about the settlement agreement. And what I was going to tell you tonight is that we've got to do a stormwater bylaw this April, so get ready. And now this came out, and it looks like we may have some more time on that, which would be good.
Good.
Hopefully.
So, but I've been to a number of meetings on this, with the MVPC and different state officials, and I think we're doing very well compared to other towns our size. But some towns have allocated tens of thousands of dollars toward consulting budgets just to be able to comply with these mandates. And so far, we did put $10,000 in the current FY20 budget, which we have needed, but we're doing this almost entirely in-house, so it was so fun.
So just a question, joining in the collective sigh of relief, assuming we don't have to, do it in the immediate time frame. I wonder what benefit we'll see in terms of water improvement in the Merrimack River when all communities have to have a stormwater plan and adhere to it better. I'm just curious because there's a sort of a workshop meeting back last year. It was this kickoff of this Merrimack River. I don't remember the name of the organization, but it was the concern was stormwater, and something like 50%, or maybe perhaps as much as
Merrimack River District Commission.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I think there was sort of a ballpark number was roughly 50% of the runoff in the river was not actually from CSOs, but was from distributed runoff, non-point source runoff. That would probably be reduced or mitigated somewhat by this when it goes in. But it's you benefit from one, but it costs a lot to do it.
That's right. Yeah. So, for example, the requirement to begin, this the 3-year requirement that all the dry weather field sampling, you got to test at the outfalls of any of your stormwater discharge, the Merrimack River or any waters of the U.S. You got to do testing of the quality of the water coming out and try to pinpoint where the hotspots are, where the contamination is coming from. But that has obvious staffing implications.
Right.
To go gather all that data and send it to labs and have it tested, and the chain of custody and all of that. It's not a small thing. It's just one bullet point. It's a whole regulatory framework.
Thanks.
And then item M is just informational. You have the basically what amounts to a press release in there for this Merrimack River District Commission, which is related topic. And then item N is also a just informational item on the additional Chapter 90 funds in the current FY20 state budget, which will add to our what we can get done in terms of paving for next season. So that's about $21,000.
So the good news is with the budget surplus from the Commonwealth, the town was allocated an additional $21,000 in Chapter 90 funds for road repairs. Unexpected. Updates on active and pending projects. I'll just ask Angus, how's the water tower doing? What's happening?
The construction is gone very well. I know you had the update at I think that was the last meeting. With the obviously things slow down in the winter, but the project has gone very well. The financing is going to be on the next agenda 2 weeks from tomorrow. You'll have a question before you to issue bond anticipation notes, which will provide basically 1-year financing while we wait to do the overall bond issue to consolidate that with the Soldiers and Sailors borrowing. result from borrowing a larger amount. So working with our financial advisor, we're recommending bond anticipation note. So it'll be 2 weeks from tomorrow that we'll look to formally authorize that.
So do you think that's a good, I mean, just playing devil's advocate here, like, so you think by waiting that we're not in danger of interest rates going up and it actually not working out, or what?
No one knows what's going to happen.
Right.
But I think it's it's a good bet to do it this way. So as I look at my projects and kind of my short list, a lot of what I had prioritized a couple of months ago continues to be kind of on the short list. Working with the new accounting software and really trying to get the finance operation to where the simple stuff is simple. That's where we're trying to get. The financial policies, the personnel policies, we haven't, I've got a lot of notes and memos, but we haven't really formally started that process. Obviously, the school building committee, I'm a member of that, and that continues to be a focus. As of today, we have a new building inspector, so getting Sam Jocelyn recruited, hired, and ramped up is terrific. He's going to be a great asset to the town. Standardized tracking of payroll accruals, the better utilization of the Harper software that needs to be a focus. The financing for the Wellfield and Briggs Hill water tank, that's that anticipation notes I just referred to. Getting that OPEB valuation closed out, that was a big amount of work. We got that last month. The agreement with Pawtucket on the building permit inspection fees for the middle high school. Close, but we're still not quite there. The MOU with Newbury for the bridge. We're basically totally rebuilding the capital program. Wayne and I have been hard at work on that, and that's going to be, we're going to be very pleased, I think, with what we propose in the capital program in terms of the level of detail and clarity on that. Not necessarily with the price tag, but at least you'll understand. And not just you, because you guys are right in the thick of this, but the broader, anyone who can pick it up will read and understand what the needs are. The Page School playground and that state earmark, we got the budget submitted to the state, so that'll unlock that money. The Water Bay Parade policy. That was my short list from 2 months ago, and you can see some of those are done, but a number of those continue on, and progress is being made in virtually all of those areas, but
You're checking them off the list, though.
Yeah, definitely. We're every day, we deal with what comes in the door, and so that always, there's some amount of lost time just dealing with the day to day. That's the nature of the work. But I think we're trying to stay focused on clearing the deck of some of these items so we can move on to the next year.
Mike, what's the time frame on the picking the designer for the car post?
Well,
Get the time frame.
Basically, we're looking over I've had different individuals look over the reports. I'm going to contact them individually and see what their suggestions are. The question is, would we have, interviews? They would be disclosed this week. Otherwise, we could just pick one. And when I say pick one, it would be to enter into negotiations with one with regard to it. So.
And if those negotiations don't go to where
Then you
we're
go to this.
satisfied, then you move to number 2.
Right.
Yeah.
Any items for future agendas that we need to address?
Not me, no.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Yes.
Could I just ask, Selectman Archibald, considering running again?
I'm undecided at
And
the
when do
moment.
you think you might make up, given that people kind of wait to what the upcoming's going to do often?
When am I gonna decide?
Sooner or later.
Sooner.
How many terms would it be for you?
This is my second now.
So, three terms. Thank you.
I thought you were on 3 terms.
No. Just seems, just seems. Move to adjourn.
A second.
All in favor? Aye.